Thank you for choosing the Minority Alliance organization meeting today. Today we'll be discussing, with Monday being MLK Day, we'll be briefly discussing MLK and just what he means to each of us as individuals and the movement going forward. And uh, as far as with last year and us seeing the huge progression that we made, how did he basically lead the way and pave the path for those things to occur? On the back end, we'll be speaking a little bit about um, the Reconstruction process prior to COVID and the role that minorities would play and have the opportunity to play in the Reconstruction process and rebuilding our country back into the way that we see it, full of equality in every area for minorities in every field. um, with MLK, personally for me, especially being from Atlanta, Georgia, MLK was a huge staple for me growing up and actually learning about him and different things that he did towards civil rights and actually being able to gain civil rights for not only minorities, but through the push and the movement that he created, it helped gain another level of equality for minorities, women, everybody across the board within our country. Um, to me, MLK was uh, in his time somebody who, no matter the controversy he faced and things of that nature, he was still very outspoken on his beliefs and stood on his beliefs. And without him, we wouldn't even be having the conversations that we're having today, uh, per minorities and them reaching equality and things of that nature. And um, what even when we saw Obama come into office in '08, MLK basically blazed that path for him to get there. Or, who's to say we would have ever seen, a black man take the reins, over our country in that nature. Um, Even in that same sense, with us watching an inauguration today, seeing Kamala Harris being sworn in, uh, that's a huge tally that we need to mark off, on the accomplishments that have been made uh, by the minority community as a whole. Um, when we've seen two minorities at two of the top positions uh, in the country as a whole, that's a huge statement, going forward on the things that our children should feel that they could possibly accomplish, and the things that minorities as a whole should be able to accomplish going forward. Uh, Kamala Harris being sworn in today was, to me, one of the biggest things in history that we didn't have the opportunity to truly celebrate this year, as far as COVID, being limiting, people being able to be there and actually support her during this inauguration process. But to see a minority woman at that, Asian African American woman, uh, at the second highest position in the country is that's huge, in itself, and it's amazing to be alive and to be able to realize this and experience all this, for me personally going forward. And I know, as far as the minority community, these for us to see these things and for our children, as I said, to see these things, it only is blazing a path that is a ton brighter going forward into the future for us. Uh, Mark, as I asked you before, with Monday being MLK Day, I just want you to speak, a bit on MLK and what he means towards the current movement and how he blazed the path for the current movement. And we'll go forward after that one.
So I feel that for minorities, where you are as a person and what you are as an identity and your place in society is um, at the heart of what we want to be. We want to be a part of this gigantic experiment, this melting pot that things are supposed to be. We want to be able to move forward, and what we want as far as equality is concerned is not a specific handout, a specific set of circumstances and rules. What we want are the opportunities to be able to blaze our own trail and to blaze our own path in life. And when MLK started out, when he was preaching for his equality, when he was preaching against the rigid segregation that we were seeing across the country and especially in the deep South, that's all that he was asking for. And there were different ways to ask for that identity and to ask for that equality. There were some who had different methods, and there were some who did not agree with MLK's vision of nonviolent resistance. But what he was able to show us through the nonviolent resistance is that you can hold someone to account without fighting them. You can push the initiative forward without grabbing a weapon, and that you could hold people to account by standing before them and letting them know, I am a person, I am a man, I am a woman, I am, a part of this society. You can't shun me away, and we're going to hold you to the words that you wrote down in your Constitution, in your Bill of Rights. You're going to give us what we have earned as a birthright, and for what we have been put through, and for what we helped build on our backs as a part of the growth and the infrastructure and the wealth of America. We have a large part of that. We have a stake in that, and we deserve to be able to our own opportunity to get a piece of that, and to be able to blaze that trail through the segregation, through the resistance of that sort of change, to be able to put it front and center, to be able to, as TV cameras were coming into their own, and being able to beam live news into people's homes, and to see what people went through in that struggle, to see what was going on in Selma, to see what was going on in that Edmund Pettus Bridge, and be able to beam those images out and show that this nonviolent resistance was not a threat to the American way of life, that it was not a threat to white people, that it was not a threat to anyone. It was simply wanting the acknowledgement that this has been going on too long and that it needed to change. And by doing so, it began to change. And of course, there was resistance to this, and there was so much anger and rage to it. And ultimately, much like it did with many of our first pioneers, and when it came to civil rights, it cost them their lives. And for Martin's legacy stung the most, and it had the heaviest hold, and it had the heaviest weight, because his vision of that nonviolent resistance and moving everybody closer to a more perfect union, which is what the promise of this country was supposed to be, that we see it, and every time we make make it a little bit farther, and every time we gain a little bit more, you see it and you feel it, and it just brings back into that legacy. And we wonder aloud all the time, what would he think about now? What would he think about Barack Obama? What would he think about Kamala Harris? What would he think about LeBron James and some of the things that we see today? Every MLK Day, I like to I watch some of his speeches. I love to watch his final speech, and I watch a few of his speeches, and I always reflect and I always think back to what's going on today, and what would he think? What would he see? He would be 92 years old right now if he had lived. And I think that he would probably feel the way a lot of us feel, which is we've definitely made some strides, but I think we've definitely kind of lost a little bit by the veil and the lure of some of those achievements that we've had. We do have Black business owners, we do have entrepreneurs, we do have millionaires, we do have actors, and we do have pro athletes who almost run their entire leagues. We've had a Black president now. We now have a Black and multiracial vice president, and it would give the illusion like we've made it. and it could cause complacency, and that complacency can lead to internal strife and internal struggle because we haven't dealt with the bigger issues of the bigger beast of systemic racism, and we haven't slayed that monster yet, and the economics are still against us, and the way people view us is still not quite on the level where they are. And those things just show that even though we have made some progress, that we still have more to go, and that we should not give up, and that we should not be complacent, and we should continue to push forward. And I think that's the endearing legacy overall of MLK, is that he knew that fight was never ending. He knew that fight was going to go on beyond him, and that it was going to go on beyond his life. It's going to go on beyond my life. And here we are, some almost 60 years. In a couple of years, they're going to be celebrating the 60-year anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. I mean, Civil Rights Act. I'm sorry. And the fight is still ongoing. We are further up the hill, but we still got some ways to go. And that we should now take these opportunities and continue to seize upon these opportunities to build that brighter future and build a nation where we are truly a melting pot of cultures, and that we don't just have a single culture over here and a single culture over there, and we're worried about which culture dominates, and we're worried about if this culture has enough. What we saw, and I know you're going to get into this in just a moment, what we saw on that inauguration stage today, to me, is the continuation of that legacy, where you see on a single stage white folks, black folks, Hispanic folks. You see, old, you see young, you see country music, you see, other, so many different things, to see, to have an African American poet laureate stand up there and deliver such beautiful words, and then coming in right behind that is Garth Brooks dropping Amazing Grace. That's the deal. That's what this whole thing was supposed to be. That's what the great American experiment was supposed to be. And to have those opportunities to get onto that level, and for that to be okay, for it not to have cost anyone anything for us to be on that level, for it not to have cost anyone their freedom to give us ours. That's the deal here. And I think that's the endearing legacy of MLK. And I saw that today, and it makes me a little bit more encouraged that we still have a long way to go, but we still have the strength to be able to get there.
And as you noted, with being able to see in the inauguration today, the melting pot, we were talking prior to, I said, it's the true reflection of the America that we've been promised, and to have leaders who truly represent us after this election cycle, and representatives who reflect the popularity, per se, if that's the way you want to put it, which is the common person, the common American. But even as minorities, with the huge accomplishment of Raphael Warnock, one of the first black senators from Georgia, the first black senator from Georgia since the pre-civil rights era. So, I mean, there are huge strides and huge steps being taken all across the board in our politics, through the awareness that we have brought about as a community over the past year. And as you said, we're starting to see the wheels and the gears turn in the right direction. But going forward is, how do we make sure that these things are solidified, as minorities, is our biggest issue as an organization going forward. When you speak on seeing the inauguration for you today, Mark, you know, you told me prior to, but I'd just like for you to reiterate, a couple of the accomplishments that showed to you, as far as Kamala Harris, being a minority, being an Asian African American, what does that scream as far as what now our daughters can accomplish, or what our sons can accomplish, what our kids can accomplish going forward.
In this great struggle that we all go through, of trying to get opportunities and have equality and the reforms that we're looking for, it is important every now and again to take a look, to stop for a second and take a breath and actually take in what you see. We saw a band from an historically black college walk down Pennsylvania Avenue today. We saw a black woman become vice president today. We saw, her get sworn in by our first Hispanic female Supreme Court justice. So there are times where we need to take a step back and take a look at that and be able to have, because the only thing that really works with continuing to push a message like this is to be able to show the work and to show the proof. And this is something that I can show to my granddaughter. And this is something that every little girl can look at on this day right here and be able to see just how far you can go and be able to see what you can do. There's this moment, and I think I actually posted it on the site today, where you had Kamala Harris, you had Amanda Gordon, and Michelle Obama. When you look at that, that is exactly what we should be able to show them. We should be able to look at that and show them and say, hey, this is the legitimate thing. This is what can be accomplished. This is where we can go. And just moving forward as we, get into this administration and we get into, whatever it is that they can accomplish, they're going to be stumbling blocks. Absolutely. But we can actually look around and we can say that it's not what it used to be. We have moved forward. We have some more to do. We have some more to go, but we are starting to see cracks. We're starting to see cracks in that wall. We're starting to see chinks in that armor. We're starting to see where we can get things done. The state of Georgia, which, I was born and raised in Michigan. I was born and raised in the North, and we grew up with stories about how, racist it was and how racist it is in Georgia and things like that. Georgia just sent a black preacher and a Jewish investigative reporter in his early 30s to the Senate. That just happened. So again, we can take a look at that, and we have so many others who can look at these things. We have a Cuban American who's going to be leading the Department of Homeland Security. We have so many things that are going to be going on. We have so many different things that we can point at and say, listen, this is a culmination of what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do. They, like the older, the people who tried, to do whatever they were trying to do 2 weeks ago, they're trying to hold on to something that had been sold to them as the vision of what we should have been. And because they were sold something that wasn't real, it couldn't hold, because ideas are only as strong as their people. And if your idea has no strength with its people, it cannot prosper. It's paper thin. So we watched it. We watched that dream start to crumble as we see the reality of what can be, as long as people are continuing to demand this from their leadership, continuing to think that the last 4 years were not okay, to know that, the type of policies that hold people down and the type of policies that are bent on keeping people poor, keeping people uneducated, keeping people misinformed, they're not okay. And if we continue to hold people to that account, then we can have more days like this. We can have more scenes like this, and they can be on more places than an inauguration stage. They can be in a boardroom. They can be in a restaurant. They can be on a construction site. They can be anywhere else in this country and everywhere else in this country if we so will it. And if we do not allow the compromise of lies, and we don't allow the compromise of a system that was not built to even benefit the people who were screaming to keep it, and being able to show that there's a brighter day for all of us, for all of our children. Being able to be equal does not hurt white children. It does not hurt them. It does not hurt a neighborhood. It doesn't tear down a suburb. It builds it up because there's more character, there's more content. What you build there will last longer and it will be stronger. And we if we can create more scenes like what we saw today, more and more people I think will start to understand that.
Yes, sir. And even as you were, stating, moving forward with seeing a lot more unprecedented things going forward from the minority community. Me and you were talking about a huge topic that we needed to discuss going forward. As far as now that COVID has occurred, there's a ton of gaps and things that need to be. We're seeing places that need to be fixed that even prior to COVID needed to be fixed among the country. Um, Places basically, there's a ton of work that needs to be done in America. And as minorities, what becomes our role in getting all this done? Um, I, I told you, I feel like one of the biggest things is moving more into the infrastructure jobs. As minorities, we saw the hugest decline, I believe, late 80s is when it originally started. The decline of, I know, African American men actually being within the construction industry in high numbers as they were. They've dwindled, over the past 35, 40 years, you know, to where we've moved into other sectors, but we've left sectors that were profitable for people within our community to be able to actually make a living doing these jobs and things of that nature. So I was telling you before, I feel like one of the biggest pushes is uh, getting especially young African American men back into these fields of construction. When it comes to, there are a ton of road reconstruction jobs, uh, bridges that need to be reconstructed and rebuilt and mended all over the country. And we need to start figuring out how, as a minority community, we could play a role within these jobs. And we're asking our country, yes, at the same time, to show us more equality and change things across the board for people within our communities. But we have to also look, what can we do to assist in building this country back up even better than it was prior to. Um, I know one of the biggest things I was looking at this week when it does come to the reconstruction process, and I know going forward, especially with Joe Biden's administration taking the lead, uh, there's a ton of environmental friendly jobs that should be coming, within the next 4 years that we see coming to the market. Um, when it comes to what is it? They're setting out the electric vehicle charge stations, getting those laid out, getting the fiber laid out, getting this 5G built out all across the country. There are a ton of IT jobs that have to do with infrastructure that we need to see more minorities move into. I Googled myself um, the demographics of the IT field and seeing that African Americans only make up 5% of the field as an entirety. Uh, that's saying a lot, even at that level, to where we need to show more representation. And not only that, these are the jobs that are going to help more minorities uh, build a life here in America and actually have a home to call their own and things of that nature. And these are decent paying jobs that we could see the change of equality that we're asking for economically by pushing more minorities into these fields and things of that nature. Um, as I was asking you before, with the reconstruction process starting at this level, of course, Reconstruction um, per minorities is something we'll be speaking on, over the next year, minimal, with coming out of COVID and ways that we can help the country from our communities to do our part and play our role. Um, what are certain jobs and things that you could think of off back, Mark, that are things that we need to start working our ways into these fields and also teaching our young youth men a lot of these traits that we lost over the years?
So I'm going to start in a strange place. I'm actually going to start with a win before I start with a what. The win on teaching these things is actually it needs to go back to middle and high school. If you go back to, all the way up until the mid to late 70s, uh, kids that came out of high school knowing how to weld, knowing how to lay concrete, knowing how to do basic plumbing and basic auto repair and things like that. And they were able to take those skills and get skilled labor jobs when they got out of school. And this is across the spectrum. This was all public school. This is black. This was white. This is across the board. And just like we've kind of done with everything else, our education system had taken a turn from the tax funded public and became to the self paid private. And those types of jobs, in accordance with that, actually became a situation where you needed to have specific degrees and specific certificates in order to do them now, which forced you to get a specific type of education that you needed to pay for, or you needed to go into debt paying for. And that kind of put everybody on this path that we're on, where you have this specific sect of people who've set in rules that have allowed themselves to get richer and perpetually more rich the greater the population grows. That is a system that we need to recognize is there, and a system that we need to do something about. Now, I've been advocating for years that a greater investment in public education is incredibly necessary. And where that will have the biggest impact is in minority communities, because as we've discussed many times, and as statistics show, these urban areas and minority communities, the population is far more dense. So if you are able to get an influx of investment into public education, into the education system, and be able to raise some of those skills, some of those vocational type skills, and do it for 21st century America, then we can actually get somewhere. When we're looking at the strides being made in clean energy, when we're looking at wind power, solar power, when we're looking at different things that we can do as far as what we're doing with vehicles now to make them autonomous and to make them electric, and different things that we're looking at, the next great revolution will be, and I know we've talked about things like Bitcoin and things like that. The greatest detriment currently to Bitcoin is that the amount of computer power that it takes to actually log things is actually a drain on our environment, and being able to actually do something about that. If anybody can fix that particular thing, that's really the only speed bump to that next revolution. So there are so many different avenues that present themselves to us. I think all the time back to, what Franklin Roosevelt did when he put in the New Deal and put all that money into teaching people how to build a highway, or teaching people how to build a school. And they not only got a skill, they not only learned construction, and were able to actually affect the viability of their own neighborhood, because they had the ability to go from place to place. They could now commute to work, as opposed to being stuck with whatever job was within whatever rural community they were in. They had the ability to move around, and they had the ability to expand their own horizon. And of course, they were able to take that money that they were making from those projects, spend that money, goes into the economy, and kept the machine going, and helped make America as strong as it was. That is something that can definitely be done again. Does it necessarily need to be done on that scale? We're not in that place. But as we come through the COVID era, and we recognize and realize how everything changed. How we get our groceries has changed. How we get our food from restaurants has changed. How we deal with one another in doctor's offices and other office settings has changed. So as things change, there will always be an inevitable door of opportunity that opens into how to make that particular change better, more efficient, and that works for more people. That will always lead to more training, that will always lead to more jobs, and that will always lead to more money, as long as people are able to kind of shift that focus. And we need to have a much more nimble system to be able to allow and shift the focus of our children and of our education systems to set those things up. So I think that for most of the things that we're talking about moving forward, it's got to start with an investment in education.
Yes, sir. And what's on my mind right now, I know you just spoke on the Bitcoin and all the jobs that are being created from this new wave of the fourth industrial revolution, as they call it. Um, One thing that I was actually watching earlier, when it does come to cryptocurrency, and an area that I don't see a lot of minority representation, is there's actually mining. Um, People are setting up mining businesses currently to actually mine Bitcoin and mine all these different cryptocurrencies, and are making millions setting up these things. I would like to see, a push going forward for more minorities, as I said, with going through the Reconstruction process and rebuilding. Uh, Even if it's a group of minorities getting together to set up these mining hubs that are raking in a ton of money, you know, yearly, especially with Bitcoin shooting up, as we talked about what last week. I think we were it shot up last year from about 10 grand to 40 grand in January of this year. So it's a ton of money to be made even in that sector that we're not as a minority community truly represented and a part of yet. So we do need to look in those different areas and sectors uh, moving forward into the next revolution that we're actually already a part of currently. Um, Another thing that I had notated was actually banding together to create a ton of small businesses. I know over the period of COVID, especially within the minority community and minority businesses, saw a lot of loss of revenue, and there have been a ton of minority businesses that have closed for good due to the limitations from the COVID crisis. Um, Over the next, I would say, 2 to 4 years, I believe we're going to see a huge influx of new minority-owned businesses. My push is for minorities to actually, as I said, band together to create these small businesses so that we see um, a circle of generational wealth that could be passed along to their children and passed along through the generations by getting together and creating these businesses, especially when it comes to the sense of why a lot of minorities don't start their own businesses is they don't have the capital to do it alone, or they don't have uh, the license, it may be, to start a certain type of business by themselves. So when we start to see the community come together and us band together to build these businesses, I believe that is a huge part of the reconstruction process that we could play a role in going forward. And as I said, when you get a conglomerate and get a group of minorities together to do this, it becomes a lot easier. The burden is a lot easier. And hopefully we can see a lot of success uh, taking this route versus trying to start a business alone and only weighing on one person alone. And we can build these businesses as a community, as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as opposed to um, simply attempting to save up money, get a loan, start up a business, you know, do the best you can and see if you can keep it open. I believe that, the buy-in may be the wave of the future. It might be the revolution when it comes to a minority-owned business being able to be sustainable and to be able to open and to be able to sustain itself over time. If there were a situation where there were conglomerates as opposed to individuals, and people could buy into the conglomerates, and then there could be a specific kind of structure as to, we're going to be, we're going to be taking over this area right here, and we're going to have a set of businesses, we're going to have this entire neighborhood, this entire line of businesses, and offer services and things like that. And being able to buy into that conglomerate to open a business, and it would provide the type of insurance, the type of protection that you need to get a business off the ground. It would also, in many cases for first-time entrepreneurs, provide a little bit of expertise and leadership in being able to get off the ground by people who've done it before. And it, because a lot of times people just think about the capital. Well, it's not just about the capital, it's about the expertise. It's about the bookkeeping, the location, marketing, all those different things when you're getting ready to start something up. And it ends up being so heavy of an investment because, again, people think about the capital that it takes to just get it started, just to get it going. And some of those other things are, kind of go by the wayside until they smack you in the face. And then it could put a business in trouble instantly, or it can make you so paper thin that when you have a situation like, COVID come along, there is no, there's no flexibility to be able to change your model. There's no flexibility to be able to change something that you do from an in-store retailer to an online retailer, or to a socially distanced retailer, or to a delivery retailer or restaurant or something like that. And, having the power of a conglomerate behind you with specific sets of rules, guidelines, contingency systems, that may be the difference between somebody getting crushed by situations like this and people being able to survive and strive. We've been able to see a lot of different corporations that didn't take massive hits during this COVID era. And a lot of it is because they had that type of corporate redundancy to them, where they were able to take a step back and go, okay, well, how are we going to do this? And, they're able to make those adjustments and make those moves and invest in the new way they're going to do something. And oftentimes, they actually even find a way for that to even be more financially efficient than what they were doing before. And, there's got to be a nimble manner about these things. And I think you get that more from some sort of conglomerate where there's more of like almost like a business congress, so to speak, where it doesn't just have a CEO and it's a corporation thing, where you have this buy-in where people are going to have this type of, power amongst themselves as business owners to be able to make real decisions in a manner that is not harmful to one, or not, that isn't going to make one money to the detriment of another, but kind of a set of guidelines and redundancies that will help them be successful. And obviously that's something that, as we talk about this, this is just kind of an idea in the wind right now. But I do believe that, something like that would be very, very powerful and help to create the type of minority ownership, minority buy-in, the type of recognition and name power that it would take to kind of pull people in neighborhoods away from some of those well-known established names that they would travel to. And I think that that would indeed have an impact on that area at all, overall, because any place where you're able to put in thriving businesses, it's going to drive more ownership, more entrepreneurship, and it's going to drive just more into that area, into that neighborhood. And you'll start to see a rise of the quality of life of the people that live there, because they work in those areas, they spend their money in those areas. And again, that's where you start to see that profitability, and you see that rising tide beginning to raise all the ships.
Yes, sir. And one of our main focuses, even as we originated last year as an organization, is focused more so on business entrepreneurship, pushing more minorities to become entrepreneurs, and as you said, take on even younger minorities as apprentices and teach them business in the business field and things of that nature. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. You know, how us banding together and these conglomerates could build this infrastructure of it becoming a little bit easier for minorities to believe that they can be entrepreneurs and actually take it up, and have a safety net that you know you have a group behind you who's fully supporting what you've got going on and fully with you in the direction that you're going as an entrepreneur. And that's huge for minorities. As we said, you know, when they do take on a business by themselves, we saw a ton of minority owned businesses fail in 2020 due to the fact that they were only relying on themselves as sole business owners and things of that nature. As I said, you know, with wrapping up today, another thing I want to reiterate was with the inauguration today, this is something we truly, yet again, within a year period, the level of history that we've been able to witness in a lot of different areas and unprecedented things continuing to occur. Um, I think we have our, what would you call it, the first second man, uh, you know, the first woman to take a leading role in our country has occurred today, and it's official as of today. So you know, with these things continuing to happen, us as an organization, we're going to continue to push for the level of equality that we believe every American deserves across the board. Um, if there's any topics that I know people within the group, or even people who are on the YouTube or the Audience platform or the Twitter platform, would like to bring to our attention for us to speak on, or topics that we need to delve into to push even further with the movement that we have going on. We're all ears, and we will always take in these recommendations and apply them to what we speak on weekly. As I posted to the page this week, I know every other week we'll be bringing back the Minority Money Mondays, where we speak on just different stocks to keep an eye on. Uh, a big belief of ours as an organization is uh, minorities need to become economically fit within this country, which will assist in reaching equality. Being economically fit means, you know, being well rounded when it comes to how to save your money, ways that your money can build for you going forward, uh, ways that you could build uh, savings accounts for your children and different people coming after you going forward. That's a huge issue that we need to attack within the minority community. Um, so Minority Money Mondays, that'll be every other week that we'll be posting the stock to keep an eye on over the 2021 period. We'll post. We also speak on cryptos and things that going forward. I believe that the cryptocurrency is yet another avenue for minorities to build wealth that we haven't been looking too closely at uh, over the over the past years, and it's something that's becoming more solidified within our society. So it's something that as minorities we should be really taking more of a look into these cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. Um, said every Wednesday we'll continue to have the Minority Alliance organization meeting and continue to discuss different ways going forward into 2020. Now that we have a new administration, um, all all the all the things are in place for our movement going forward to continue and continue to evolve and progress. So it's as I speak with you all the time, Mark, I always say, you know, my belief personally is it's on us as minorities uh, going forward to take the reins on the narrative behind the movement and push for the things that we feel we want across the board.
And you know, what I would say to, you know, to kind of wrap things up today is, you know, to the group, you know, to everyone that, you know, may see this may hear this or see this video later, uh, I know I'm tired, and I know you guys are tired. We've seen a lot, right? We've been through a lot. We've seen a lot. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot still to do. So, though I would say that we definitely need to take a moment, as I said earlier, to pay attention to what we saw. Because again, we got to see an HBCU march up Pennsylvania Avenue today. That is not small. That is big. Like that is the truth right there. And although we still have a long way to go, we still got a major fight in our hands, and we still got so much more to do. One of the things that I would say is that, when we look at this organization, this was a method of being able to put all of those feelings, all those passions, that rage, all that stuff that we were feeling and seeing from all the inequality that we were going through, and be able to put it to action, to be able to put our investment, our time, sometimes even our money where our mouth is, and actually put it out there and put our information out there, do some research, take a look around, voice our opinion, put our face and our name to those opinions, and actually put it out there for people in hopes that we can create a better tomorrow for each other, and even for ourselves just a little bit, by bringing those minds together, bringing those ideas together, and being able to speak on them. So when we put it out there that, hey, if you guys got some ideas, you guys got anything that you want to bring up, please bring it up. That we mean it. Don't be shy about that stuff, because again, we don't have all the answers. When we have these conversations, they're both cathartic in dealing with what we see in this world, and it's also a method of putting out ideas out there in hopes that we actually can catch on. I say this all the time. You don't know which snowball you throw at the mountain is going to be the one that causes the avalanche, but when it does, it's going to be big, right? So as we look at all these different things that we're doing and trying to do, we have to remember that we are bringing each other along. Every person that hears one of these casts, and it's like, I didn't think about it this way, or anybody that offers an idea, anybody that puts out a post out there, or puts in a comment on a post, and is able to add to the entirety of what we're trying to do here, and adds to the ideas, and adds to the bank of knowledge and talents that are out there, that are available to a minority community who has been disenfranchised, who has been undervalued and underutilized and underdeveloped, and to be able to add a little bit to that. And iron sharpens iron, and we continue to sharpen each other's skills, and sharpen each other's mindsets, and sharpen each other's thoughts. And as we move forward into this kind of new administration, we got so much more ahead of us, with an actual possible horizon of COVID out there. That's something tangible that we can see. When we see a new administration with all sorts of new people coming in, and there's an actual feeling that, hey, maybe something actually might be different this time. We only get one birthright as minorities, and it's the birthright that MLK fought for. It's the birthright that Malcolm X fought for, and it's the birthright we're fighting for right now in this cast. And that birthright is an opportunity. And we need to make sure that we seize our opportunities when they come along, explore things. Not every new thing is going to be for you. Maybe crypto isn't for you. Maybe something else that we talk about isn't for you, but continue to look at it, continue to explore it, continue to, not let the opportunities pass you by. Take a peek in, because you never know which one's going to be the one. Keep throwing snowballs at that mountain, and we're going to see what happens. So I'll end this the same way I end it all the time, which is to make sure you take care of yourselves, make sure you take care of each other. You are your brother's keeper. Be well out there. Keep thinking, keep looking, and we'll see you guys next week.